Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. My name is Niko and today we're going to be talking about plant 10 sour water system. In the previous video we talked about plant 8 and its amine unit. The amine unit at plant 8 pre-treats our sour gas before it gets to the SRU sulfur recovery unit in plant 8 as well. I have made a mistake in the previous video where I said that sour water treatment system is actually also a part of plant 8. But in reality it's just two units, the amine unit and the SRU unit. At the old plant the sour water treatment duties are carried out by the plant 10, which is kind of deals mostly with common systems. In this case it kind of makes sense because it collects the sour water from different vessels, different pieces of equipment in different plants, whether that be plant 5, plant 7 and stuff like that. However, our modern plants like 53 and 68 do have 3 units and one of them would be the sour water treatment unit. But anyways, let's move on and talk about the process in plant 10 sour water treatment unit, sour water system, and how it interacts with another plants at the base plant. As you may remember, in plant 8 amine unit, we first started by removing fluids like sour water from our acid gas stream in the knockout drum. We have a very similar idea as well in the sour water system, where first we want to get rid of the gases in our sour water so we can treat the sour water. The first piece of equipment we're gonna start with is our sour water feed degasser. We have a lot of different pieces of equipment and a lot of processes that produce sour water. However, the sour water that comes from those pieces of equipment is not consistent. Depending on the process and the vessel or the equipment it comes from, sour water may contain a different amount of hydrogen sulfide and may contain more hydrocarbons in it, stuff like that. Let's take a look at the P&ID I prepared for you today. Here we have the sour water feed degasser and we have two inputs of sour water. The feed degasser consists of 3 separate parts. We have the top section, which deals mostly with gases mixed with liquids. Then we have a second section which deals mostly with liquids. There's a little bit of gas and there is also oils. And then we have the third section. The third section mostly just collects the oil from the second section. The oil in the second section gets skimmed off and goes through the riser pipe and falls into the third section. So that's the basic idea behind each section of this vessel. So let's take a look at the first section in more detail. The sour water feed that enters our first section has a lot of hydrogen sulfide, but doesn't have a whole lot of hydrocarbons in it. As the sour water enters the vessel, it flushes and the hydrogen sulfide and the light hydrocarbons vaporize. And let's talk about flushing. So the flushing is when you have a sudden change in pressure. So for example, we have a high pressure on one side, then we have a low pressure on another side. This pressure difference normally comes from when our liquid has to deal with some sort of obstacle, like for example there could be like a hole or multiple holes, and as the liquid travels through the obstacle it encounters the rapid change in pressure, and as a result part of the liquid vaporizes, usually the light stuff. In our case it's gonna be mostly hydrogen sulfide with some small amounts of lighter hydrocarbons, which are then collected and treated somewhere else in another plant or flared off. Some part of the sour water from the first section gets to the second section through the valve. This valve is controlled by our level controller, which tries to maintain a certain level in the first section. Simply put, we don't want our sections to run dry because, well, this vessel was not really designed for that. So that's why maintaining level in each section is important. And let's talk about our sour water feed that enters the second section. This sour water stream has a lot more heavy hydrocarbons in it, and as a result there's gonna be an oil film forming on top of the sour water that will need to be skimmed off and removed. As the sour water enters the second section of the feed degasser, it mixes with the sour water from the first section. The same flash evaporation occurs here as well. Gases and hydrogen sulfide, lighter hydrocarbons that are produced. and any gases will be removed and will join the overhead stream from the top of the vessel. Inside the second section we also have an oil skimmer which skims oil and directs it through the riser pipe down to the third section. So our third section is basically an oil accumulator. All this collected oil, which is a mixture of different hydrocarbons, will be pumped out to another plant where it will get recycled. And we also have a level controller here to maintain the level so it doesn't run dry. As you've noticed, this is the first time I ever talk about instrumentation. In my previous videos I wanted to keep it simple, so I didn't really include instrumentation before. But I decided that the time has come to actually start showing you the instrumentation, and then we'll talk more about instrumentation in more detail some other time. For now, all you need to know is that we have some kind of controller that controls level, and the way it does that is by either slightly opening or closing the valve. The valves are always located on the pump discharge. This is because we don't want to damage our pump by creating a vacuum on our suction side of the pump. That's just the basic idea behind this, and we can talk about that some other time and in another video in more detail. Anyways, let's get back to our second stage. The sour water from our second stage gets pumped out into the oil-water separator. We do have another sour water stream that joins in. This sour water stream comes from other pieces of equipment and doesn't have too much hydrogen sulfide or any other gases in it, so there's no point in sending it over to the degasser first. Our oil-water separator does have the ability to separate those small amounts of gases we might have in our sour water still. And all of that would just get flared off. So I didn't draw any internals for this separator because there's actually no description on how this separator actually works. But we're just gonna assume it's a magic black box that just separates oil, sour water and the gases somehow. All the oil, which is again just a mixture of different hydrocarbons, gets pumped out to the other plants that recycle the oil. And of course, again, we have the level controller which tries to maintain a certain level of oil in the separator. Oh yeah, and I did forget to mention that we do have some flash evaporation taking place here as well. So any vapor produced will be taken care of by the flare system. Anyways, the sour water from the oil water separator gets pumped into the feed preparation tank. We have a level controller in here which maintains the level of sour water in the oil water separator as well. And then we actually have two pumps here. This is because from my understanding, the feed preparation tank is located far away and actually does require a large pump head. So this feed preparation tank actually plays a big role in the entire system. Its main purpose is to homogenize the sour water that comes from different sources, just so we are working with sour water that is consistent. Otherwise, we're gonna have a lot of variations in the amount of hydrogen sulfide in the sour water. And once it gets to SRU, this is gonna cause a lot of problems, this variation. So the sour water sits in that tank for some time and it becomes more consistent. Another purpose of this tank is to provide the surge capacity, because at times we may have disturbances in other plants which may result in either more sour water coming in or less sour water coming in. So this tank provides that surge capacity so our next vessel doesn't run dry or doesn't overflow. So this tank actually has floating roof which prevents the sour gas formation and vapor formation. The basic idea is that if you don't have any space above the liquid will not be able to vaporize. So as the level in the tank changes, the floating roof will also go up and down. We also do have a nitrogen supply in here. Nitrogen is used to create a blanket gas in between the liquid and the floating roof. This further helps to minimize vapor formation in the tank. The hydrocarbons that are still in the sour water will have some time to float to the top of the sour water, and there is going to be an oil skimmer that's going to skim the oil, and all this skimmed oil will be collected and sent off to another plant for recycling. You may remember in the previous episodes I talked about the steam sparger, which is a pipe that has holes in it for the steam to escape, and this is done to keep the product from freezing in the winter. However, we don't actually have a steam sparger in here. The way I drew it kind of makes it look like a steam sparger, but I just didn't really know how to draw it in any other way. But basically in this tank we have a piece of pipe through which steam flows and just keeps the sour water from freezing in the winter. So the next piece of equipment we have here is this sour water stripper. And before I get into details, I kind of want to talk about the symbols and how I present things on my drawings here. There are common symbols and shapes that are meant to represent common things on the P&IDs and stuff like that. And I often don't draw them correctly on my P&IDs just because I want to keep them nice and simple and easy for everyone to understand. But as we move forward, I think I want to start introducing more and more like correct symbology and stuff like that, just so everybody's on the same page here. The only problem is that it's not always easy to find a shape for what you're trying to draw, and not always those shapes make a whole lot of sense and not always easy to recognize. For example, this is a symbol for internal floating roof tank. And the thing is, many people who are not familiar with P&ID symbology may think that this is just a house with a balcony or something. I personally don't really like this symbol, so that's why I don't use it on my drawing. And here are the symbols for the distillation trays and columns. As you can see, there are different shapes for all the different kinds of trays that you may encounter. But there is also this shape that isn't labeled, so this cross-looking shape. This actually means packing, but it doesn't specify what kind of packing. It could be just ceramic packing, it could be glass packing, it could be, you know, some metal or whatnot. So on my drawing I actually have the same shape, and here it represents packing as well. I don't have any information on what kind of packing is inside this vessel, so we're just gonna assume it's a generic packing. I did some search to try and see if I could find any more symbols and stuff like that, and I came across this post here. P&ID symbols for vessels, tanks and columns. Check out these essential symbols used in P&ID, pipe and instrumentation diagrams, to represent different types of vessels, tanks and columns in chemical plants and industrial processes. Whether you're working with fluidized beds, knockout drums or thermal insulation vessels, understanding these symbols is key to seamless engineering communication. So I think this paragraph here stresses the importance of knowing what symbols represent. But then you look at the actual symbols, and your symbols here don't have proper captions. Like, you don't have to tell me that this is a vertical and this is a horizontal vessel. You can make this out by just looking at the orientation of the vessel. But then there is a column here with some gray square inside, and then there is a column with black square inside, and they're both named tray column. But what's the difference? You can't tell because it doesn't have a proper caption. So what the fuck is the point of you telling me to check out those essential P&ID symbols if they're not even captioned right? So what's the difference between this column with packing and then this column with two sections of packing? Because they're both named packing C. And of course we got some comments here which is like, awesome, thanks, and you know, fire and emoji and stuff like that, and love and stuff like that. 803 likes, and that's for the post that doesn't even show you half of the information you need to know. And this is because whoever created this was trying to put as many symbols on here as possible, without considering that some people may need to know what's the difference between similar looking symbols. Like, come on, this is like common sense. Like, shit like that shouldn't even be posted. So yeah, if you ever do something, use your common sense. Anyways, let's get back to my shitty drawing and let's talk about the sour water stripper. So we have 50-pound steam that enters the vessel from the bottom and travels to the top. And then we have the sour water that's being pumped from our preparation tank into this sour water stripper. And as the sour water enters the vessel, the sour water travels downwards through the piping and interacts with the steam that travels upwards. This interaction with hot steam strips away hydrogen sulfide, hydrocarbons and even ammonia from our water. So what gets to the bottom of the vessel is cleaner water which is suitable for reuse in the process, but you can't drink it because it still has very small traces of hydrogen sulfide and all the toxic stuff. That water is then collected and pumped into the heat exchanger, where it exchanges heat with the cold water, so it cools it down, and that cooled water is then sent as a utility or a process water to all the plants that need water. In case if the level of water is too high inside this vessel, the level controller can open up the valve and drain some of the water into the tailings pond. As of overhead, we're gonna get sour water with high concentration of hydrogen sulfide, hydrocarbons and ammonia in it. This sour water is more or less in the vapor state right now, so it goes through the stripper overhead condenser, which cools it down, and after that it gets into the knockout drum. This knockout drum will knock out all the remaining water and water vapor, so we end up with just the sour water acid gas. The water and water vapor is refluxed back into the vessel through the pump, and of course again we have a level controller which maintains the level of liquid in the knockout drum, and all the extra liquid gets refluxed back into the column. The sour water acid gas that we end up with gets to the sulfur recovery unit SRU, and we also have a PSV, pressure safety valve, which will protect our vessel from overpressure and flare away any sour water acid gas in case of overpressure event occurs. As you can see, that's the entire sour water system. In conclusion, sour water system recycles processed water, and it does that by stripping away hydrogen sulfide content from the water, which is then sent to sulfur recovery unit to make the elemental sulfur. And that seems like everything I have for you today. So thank you very much for joining me this time. So I will be seeing you in the next one then. Bye bye now.